How's it going, everyone? Welcome back into the channel. So the Green Bay Packers official 53-man roster just released. So in this video, we're going to give my initial thoughts and reactions to this 53-man roster, as well as compare it to my prediction that I made yesterday on who I thought would make the roster and go over every position group on who did make it and who didn't. So during the morning, we saw a lot of the cuts start to happen, but obviously in Green Bay fashion, we didn't know all of the cuts until the official report came out on the Packers website, and now we officially have it, so let's dive into it. Before we get into this recap, I want to thank today's video sponsor, Manscaped. Attention all my bearded beasts, from stubble to mane. If you didn't already know, Manscaped now sells beard products. You heard that right. The leaders in below the waist grooming have changed the game with the Beard Hedger Pro Kit, and now they're going a step further with their brand new Handyman, an electric shaver for a quick and convenient way to achieve a clean shaven look. Whether you're going for that clean shaven look or looking to shape up your neckline like myself, Handyman has you covered. Head over to manscaped.com and use my custom code BAS20, BAS20 to receive 20% off your entire order plus free shipping. This is honestly my favorite beard trimmer I've ever had, and it's become a very easy ritual of mine to clean up and trim my beard. And now with the new Handyman, it's really easy to clean up the neckline and also the cheek line with it. No one likes a weird beard, so say goodbye to all these stubble trouble with the new Manscaped Beard Hedger. This thing is a juggernaut of fixing faces. First off, the cordless trimmer has a rotary wheel that gives you 20 hair cutting lengths, all with one guard, so no more messy drawers full of extra add-ons. That's right, face grooming doesn't have to be hard. Get 20 different beard lengths with just one guard. Your face is the first impression, and for me, my beard is the most important accessory to that, so make sure you have yourself covered with the new Beard Hedger. Now, if you're not going for the bearded look and say for something smoother, Manscaped's new Handyman face shaver is perfect for you. The Handyman is the perfect compact tool you can take with you on the go to achieve that clean-shaven look without all the effort. So guys, if you want to take care of your face, head over to manscaped.com and use my code BAS20, that's BAS20, to get 20% off and free shipping. That's a whole 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com with my code BAS20. Hit the refresh button with Manscaped. All right, so let's bring up the screen and go over this initial 2023 Green Bay Packers roster here. So it says the Packers reduced the roster to 53 players during the NFL mandated roster reduction on Tuesday. Green Bay can start building its 16-player practice squad after the waiver process concludes at 11 a.m. Central Time on Wednesday. All right, so first let's start with the quarterback position. I'm sure everyone that made a prediction got this one correct. Jordan Love and Sean Clifford. Last week, Matt LaFleur made it abundantly clear that Sean Clifford will be quarterback too, and I thought he was pretty impressive during preseason and will be a solid backup to Jordan Love. I was also very impressed with Jordan Love and the things I saw from him in all three preseason games. I'm just so excited to get the season started and to see a full game of Jordan Love against the Chicago team week 1. We see released is Alex Magoo. Definitely see him coming back on the practice squad so he could be that third emergency quarterback that has the ability to be dressed on game day. Say if Jordan Love and Sean Clifford were hurt in the game, which is unlikely to happen, but if that were to happen, Alex Magoo is allowed to suit up and enter the games. This so they don't have a situation like San Fran last year where Christian McCaffrey has to play quarterback. That's the reason of that rule. So there's no real reason to keep 3 quarterbacks anymore. So that's why they kept 2, and Alex Magoo was released, but will likely be back on the practice squad unless they find another quarterback that was waived that they like better. As for the running backs, they did keep 3 running backs, but they decided to keep Emmanuel Wilson over Patrick Taylor. This was the first thing I got wrong, and I wanted Emmanuel Wilson to make the roster. Don't get me wrong. He proved it. He led the league in preseason rushing, including that amazing performance against Cincinnati, that 110 yards, the 2 touchdowns, including an 80-yard touchdown run. He definitely deserved it, but I was kind of worrisome of the Packers not keeping him on the roster because he only showcased his running ability, didn't do much on special teams, and only had 1 pass blocking attempt last week, which did look good, so that might have, factored into him making this roster. But in terms of all those other things, Patrick Taylor, we know what we have with him. He's a special teamer, he can pass block, he can be used in the receiving game, and he's a pretty decent runner. So it was very interesting to see the Packers actually do this, and like I said, I'm happy that they did it. I'm happy that they went Emmanuel Wilson because I think this guy has great potential, and maybe next year or the year after that, we're looking at him as our first or second running back because he shows great promise, great vision, one cut type of running back that the Packers like in their running scheme. So we'll see what happens happens with Aaron Jones next year, A.J. Dillon next year, we could be looking at Emmanuel Wilson being number 1 or number 2, even as early as next year. So it makes sense the Packers looking for their future here by keeping Emmanuel Wilson, who likely would have been claimed by another team based on how well he ran, maybe a team that needs a second running back or something of that sort. So they waived/injured Lou Nichols and Tyler Goodson. Man, Tyler Goodson, I really wanted him to make the roster, but he simply just couldn't stay healthy. And now I believe they have to wait 3 weeks for him to clear that waived injured period, I'm pretty sure, for him to even be able to come back on the roster, even on the practice squad. Same with Lou Nichols. So I think there's like a 3-week period of something of that sort. So we'll see what happens there. But I would assume they'll bring Patrick Taylor back on the practice squad, and he could even be elevated for game day if they really wanted him for special team reasons. Nate McCrary, another released there. Moving on to the wide receiver group here, I thought they were going to keep 7. They ended up keeping 6. Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Malik Heath, Samori Toure, and Romeo Doubs. So the only thing I got wrong here was I thought they were going to be keeping Grant DuBose as the 7th wide receiver. But when you're forming out your roster, you're looking at what players do you think can pass the waiver process and we can get back on the practice squad. And when it's a back-end receiver, a lot of the time, no other team will claim him. Now, Grant DuBose wasn't even, active for most of the offseason, so that probably made the Packers think, okay, he's going to pass through waivers, no team's going to claim him, and we can get him right back on our practice squad. And I do likely see that happening. So this makes sense that he was released and not kept on the roster, so they can keep other positions. There are other players that might have been claimed, but the big one here being Malik Heath. I said it in my prediction yesterday. This guy definitely deserves to make the roster. I've said it multiple times. I'll gladly eat crow on Malik Heath. I didn't think he was going to keep it up for, training camp after all the talk of OTAs and minicamp of how well he was doing. I was like, when the pads come on, let's see what he does, because I watched his tape at Ole Miss and I wasn't too impressed, but he definitely proved me wrong. He played extremely well this preseason, this training camp, and he deserved to make the Packers 53-man roster. And he even got first team reps last week in practice and against the Seattle Seahawks. So right now, one of the things is Romeo Doubs and Tay Wicks are both out with injury. I believe they're both hamstrings. I know Romeo Doubs is. I believe Tay Wicks' injury is a hamstring as well, which can definitely linger. So there's a chance that Doubs and Wicks may not be able to play in this Bears game, and Malik Heath will be a starting wide receiver outside Christian Watson. It would be Watson and Heath on the outside, and Jaden Reed in the slot, as Torrey is more of a slot guy. I think they would put Heath out there out wide, and that showed in that Seattle game, putting him opposite Christian Watson. So they also released Jadakiss Bonds, Dre Miller, Deuce Watts, Bo Melton, Cody Crest, and Grant DuBose. Bo Melton, another player just like Tyler Goodson that was doing really good to start preseason, then got hurt. He was actually my 6th receiver, but then got hurt and obviously didn't return, so he didn't make the roster. Cody Crest might return to the practice squad. I would assume Bo Melton will return to the practice squad. Jadakiss Bonds had a nice game against Seattle, so he could be an option for the practice squad as well. For the tight end / fullback, we have Josiah DeGuara. It says Tyler Kraft. Obviously, it's Tucker Kraft. This is the official Packers website, so pretty crazy that it says Tyler Kraft there. Show the man some respect. And Luke Musgrave. So I think this is a position that's also going to change in the next coming days, whether that's bringing back Austin Allen after they shore up the roster a little bit or signing an outside free agent at tight end. I feel like they need to go into the season with 4 tight ends. I know DeGuara is going to play that fullback role, so if he's at that H-back spot, that leaves you with just Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave, both rookies. So I think they're going to probably either bring back Austin Allen or get a street free agent in on that group. For the offensive line, they kept 11, but I put an asterisk on that because we have Luke Tenuta here. If you watched my prediction video yesterday, I said the Packers are going to roster Luke Tenuta and put him on IR probably today or tomorrow. And that was pretty much proven earlier this morning when they didn't keep Matt Orzech. They waived him, but it was noted that he was going to be re-signed tomorrow, their long snapper. So right now, this roster doesn't include a long snapper, but that's because Luke Tenuta is going to be placed on IR either today or tomorrow, and they're going to re-sign Matt Orzech. I know they liked Luke Tenuta, and if they were to replace him on IR before this roster, he would be out the entire year. This allows them to bring back Luke Tenuta during the season if they want to. So the rest of the linemen, we have Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker, Bakhtiari, Royce Newman, Josh Myers, Caleb Jones, Yosh Nijman, Elton Jenkins, Sean Ryan, John Runyon, and then that Luke Tenuta there. So the only one I got wrong here was Royce Newman. I thought they would end up moving on from Royce Newman, but he does offer some depth on the interior of the offensive line. The Packers definitely have more tackles, and they're kind of light on the interior, really the only backup being Sean Ryan, so it makes sense for them to keep Royce Newman. I was just sick of his inconsistent and poor play for the past couple of seasons, and I just thought the Packers should move on from him. But they did keep him, but he could be, a roster casualty casualty if they want to bring another player on in the next coming weeks. So we'll keep an eye on that. But Rasheed Walker's been very impressive. Started at left tackle during practice, started at left tackle against the Patriots and the Seahawks, and I thought played really well. Josh Nijman's been the trade talk the past couple of days, and I don't really agree with it unless a team comes out and offers like a second or a third. I think you need to keep him on this roster. Caleb Jones has been impressive during training camp, as has Sean Ryan. So glad they kept both of those guys as well. They released James Empey, Cole Schneider, Kadeem Telfort, and Gene DeLance. I think Telfort could be back, maybe even Empey or Cole Schneider as well on the practice squad. Moving on to the defensive line, I was correct outside of I didn't keep John Ford on this roster. So TJ Slayton, Devontae Wyatt, Colby Wooden, Carl Brooks, and Kenny Clark. All those guys were roster locks. There's no way, shape, or form those 5 weren't making the roster. It was a question of, will they keep John Ford as that 6th lineman to back up TJ Slayton at nose tackle? They decided to do that. But again, he could end up off the roster tomorrow during waiver periods if there's a player that the Packers want to claim. There's a lot of players on this initial roster that very well could not be here tomorrow, and I think John Ford could be one of them. We'll see what happens. They released Jason Lewan, Antonio Moultrie, and Chris Slayton. I think Chris Slayton comes back on the practice squad. He's been part of the Packers for the last few years, so he offers some versatility on the defensive line. I think he's a good practice squad guy, but everyone else on the defensive line except for John Ford was no question make the roster. John Ford, I thought, didn't have a good preseason at all, training camp at all, but he is a body for nose tackle to back up TJ Slayton. Moving on to edge, very impressed with myself for this edge group. Since the beginning of this offseason, before OTAs, made my 53-man roster prediction, and I had 6 of them. And I had these 6: Justin Hollins, Rashawn Gary, JJ Enagbare, Brenton Cox Jr., Lucas Van Ness, and Preston Smith. A lot of people are saying they're not going to keep 6. They've never kept 6, and they're going to keep 5. And whether it's going to be Brenton Cox Jr. or Justin Hollins, we'll see. I've always said I think they're going to keep 6, and they're going to keep all of them, and they did exactly that. Justin Hollins offers a great veteran presence, a good against the run, decent against the pass, right place, right time type of guy. Rashawn Gary being back is awesome. JJ Enagbare has had a good preseason, stepped in last year after Gary's torn ACL as a 5th-round pick, and I thought produced really well. Lucas Van Ness, obviously the rookie, and Preston Smith, the other starter opposite, whoever it's going to be week 1. Brenton Cox Jr. obviously being the big name here, one of 3 undrafted free agents that made this roster, and continuing that 19-year streak. Well, now makes it 19 years of an undrafted free agent making this roster, and he had every right to. I thought there was no way they're going to move on or waive Brenton Cox Jr. He's going to be claimed by another team 100%. He offers so much potential, and as I always say, you can never have enough guys to rush the passer. Brenton Cox Jr. could become one of the starting edges in future years, or one of the main rotational guys. If in a couple years the Packers likely won't have Preston Smith and Justin Hollins, they could have an awesome rotation of 4 guys, once they get more playtime under their belt with Rashawn Gary, JJ Enagbare, Brenton Cox Jr., and Lucas Van Ness. The future is very, very bright for this edge room. This is like one of the most loaded, talented edge rooms that I can remember in a long time for the Packers. They cut Keyshawn Banks, who probably will be back for the practice squad. I thought he had a good training camp. Aaron Mosby, and then Kenneth Odemegwu will probably be back because they can roster him since he's an international player. As for inside linebacker, I thought they were going to keep 4 here and move on from Tariq Carpenter, but they rostered Tariq Carpenter. So just like John Ford, another player that could maybe, be removed from the roster in the coming days. But Quay Walker, Tariq Carpenter, Eric Wilson, Isaiah McDuffie, and Devondre Campbell. It makes sense, I guess, keeping Tariq Carpenter because we don't know if Rashawn Gary is going to be ready week 1, so they might have just wanted another linebacker here. I'm definitely comfortable with Isaiah McDuffie filling in for Campbell if we need be. Eric Wilson is a high-tier special team player, the 2nd highest graded PFF special teamer last year. Tariq Carpenter hasn't really found a role, was safety last year, linebacker this year, not a great special teamer, so kind of shocked he's on this roster, to be honest. I think there was, a couple other people that deserved it more than him, but nonetheless, he's on the roster. We'll see if he stays on it. Then they released Jimmy Phillips and Marvin Pierre. I think Phillips had a great camp, just there's too many bodies in that room. Likely will be back on the practice squad tomorrow. Another position that I'm very impressed that I guessed right yesterday was cornerback with 4. A lot of people guessed 5 cornerbacks or 6, and I didn't see many people guess 4, and I did yesterday, and it was exactly these 4. Jair Alexander, Keyshawn Nixon, Rasul Douglas, Carrington Valentine. PUP is Eric Stokes, so he'll be able to come back after week 4 if he's ready, so there's no real rush there because the emergence of Carrington Valentine. If one of these guys end up with an injury during the season, say Rasul Douglas, I'm I'm completely content with Valentine coming in. I think he's looked great so far, and he could step right into that role. And he also played some slot against Seattle, so they're probably seeing his capabilities there. Say if Keyshawn Nixon underperforms and they want Carrington Valentine out on the field, that's another option there. They released Elijah Hamilton, Shamar Jean-Charles, William Hooper, Corey Ballantyne, Terrell Ford, and Keandre Thomas. You know, Shamar Jean-Charles got so many chances, and he just didn't really perform this preseason and hasn't performed since being drafted. Elijah Hamilton signing last week. William Hooper, I thought, had a good preseason. Corey Ballantyne is a special teamer, likely will be back for practice squad. Terrell Ford had a good game against Seattle. So I think at least two of these four guys, these last four guys, will be back on the practice squad tomorrow. As for the safety position, we have Don Levitt, Rudy Ford, Darnell Savage, John Owens, and Anthony Johnson Jr. I thought they were going to keep 6. They ended up injured reserve Tarvarius Moore. I thought they were going to keep him. As last week Matt LaFleur said, it was a day-to-day knee injury. Clearly not, or they just simply didn't like him enough to keep him on the roster. So they decided to go with only one of the veterans in John Owens. Anthony Johnson Jr. on this roster makes sense. He offers a lot of potential. Plus, he played 3 years a corner at Iowa State. So if the Packers keeping 4 cornerbacks is light, you know, if they need a guy in a pinch, say if one of them goes down in the game and they want to roll out a dime look, Anthony Johnson Jr. could do it for you. He has experience at cornerback. He's a better safety, in my opinion. Definitely keep him at safety, but if you need him to, he could play corner. So, you know, Don Levitt remaining on the team, special teamer, Rich Bisaccia guy. Rudy Ford and Darnell Savage are the starters. John Owens was okay all of preseason, just, you know, mainly a depth guy there, a veteran guy. They also released Ennis Gaines and Benny Sapp. Thought Benny Sapp had a good preseason, likely will be back on the practice squad. I could also see Ennis Gaines back on the practice squad as, you know, a versatile guy, special teamer, safety, slot cornerback, special teamer. Finally, to round things out, we have the special teams here, Anders Carlson and Daniel Wheeling. We saw Pat O'Donnell get released yesterday, and Daniel Wheeling make the roster. Makes sense, younger, cheaper, and had a good camp. Waived/injured Broughton Hatcher released Matt Orzak, who will be back tomorrow once Luke Tuno is put on IR, and they cut Pat O'Donnell yesterday. So hype that Daniel Wheeling's on this roster. Going to be the first Irishman since 1985 to make a 53-man roster. So that does it for my initial reaction on the Green Bay Packers 2023 53-man roster. A super young roster. Nonetheless, has a lot of potential, has a lot of talent. I'm so hyped that they kept those 3 undrafted free agents, Manuel Wilson, Malik Heath, and Brenton Cox Jr. All 3 of those guys 100% earned to make this roster. I'm so hyped. We are so close to week 1 against the Chicago Bears, where we can finally start to see this young team develop. Also, guys, I wanted to remind you, you have a couple more days to enter in this signed Romeo Doubs Packers away jersey. To enter in this giveaway, which ends at the end of August, you go to pristineauction.com, register on their website using my custom code BAS as the registration code. That'll enter you in this giveaway and all future giveaways, which I'll be doing at least 2 a month for the rest of the year. So make sure to go sign up on Pristine Auction. It'll give you a $10 site credit where you can check out all their cool Packers signed gear they have to offer. But that about does it for this video. I appreciate you guys watching. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like down below. Supports my channel a ton. But I'll catch you on the next one. And as always, go Pack Go.